Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Go In Pro podcast. On this podcast, we talk to musicians and interview people who are working professionally in music or working towards becoming a professional musician and just learn about them and what they've done, what they're doing, and all that. Today's episode is going to be a little different, kind of special because I realized I've never really introduced who I am. So I thought I would take the time to interview myself. So today's guest, and this will be the only time I do this, will be myself. So I just wanted to talk about who I am, introduce myself. My name's Jordan, and I'm a piano teacher. I'm a piano player. I play several other instruments, most notably drums. I play drums for my church, and I've played drums in various bands and stuff. And I'll talk more about that later on. I am married to a girl named Michaela, and we've been married for about maybe 8 months now, 7, 8 months, not too long. And we have two children who are a cat and a dog. You'll see the cat sometimes in my videos. He'll be hanging out. He's sitting right over there. He likes to sit on my desk. I'll probably, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll probably see him at some point. And we live in just outside of Anderson, South Carolina, which is where we both went to college. Ah, there he is. He's trying to drink my coffee. And yeah, that's pretty much right now. Mostly what I do is I just teach piano lessons, and I do that in the afternoons, kind of after school gets out, and then in the mornings I spend my time practicing piano and stuff. But I'll talk more about that later. Just what inspired me to get into music, and I kind of knew from a young age what I wanted to do inherently, but I didn't really know what that looked like until later on in life. So I used to play PC games, and if you guys grew up in, I was born in the '90s, and so I'm sure if you guys, a lot of my audience is going to be similar age to me. You guys played PC games growing up. And I don't know if you remember like Majesty and Age of Empires and Age of Mythology. Those games were spectacular. But what was most notable to me was the music that was happening in those games. And so sometimes I would play those games and just listen to the music in it. And my parents have always been really supportive of me. They noticed that I was really attentive to the music and I really enjoyed listening to it. And they pursued me actually about wanting to learn an instrument because I think I was like 7 or 8 years old at the time, which is a great time to start an instrument. And so we were talking about what could I do potentially, and I had really bad asthma growing up. I still do a little bit, and it affects me sometimes, but not nearly like it when I was younger. So any wind instrument or brass instrument was ruled out of the equation. So that led to me playing violin actually, and we found a great teacher. Her name was Sally Patotsky, and she was actually the first chair viola player for the Greenville Philharmonic. She was a fantastic player and still is. I think she still plays with them. So I took violin lessons with her for about 6 years, I think, and that was great. But the thing is, there's something that I experienced. Do you want to say, hey, Joey? Something that I experienced with my own students is when a kid is taking lessons, they're not necessarily going to take it as seriously as they should be. And I'd say I teach about just over 30 students, and probably 75% of them are just kind of going through it. Whatever we work on in our lessons are what we work on the next week. I only have a handful of students who actually take work home and work on things on their own and bring it to me where I can kind of fine tune it and whatnot. And so that's who I was. Whatever we worked on in the lesson, I would practice for like 15 minutes a day, just enough so that my parents wouldn't bother me to do it. And I really regret that now, but I was a kid. You can't go back and change anything. So I didn't get as much out of violin as I would have liked to, just because I didn't take it super seriously. It was just something else to do. I mean, I did enjoy it, and there was parts of it that I really did enjoy, and I have great memories of playing, especially because we did lots of ensemble stuff and whatnot, and it gave me experience. So that's kind of was my first dip into music, and then, but it wasn't really something I took super duper seriously, and so let me think. It was when stop really. He's chewing on my wires. So this is the funny story. Whenever I was about 12 years old, my neighbor who had an uncle who was a drummer was just trying to get rid of a drum set. It was an old Pearl Export series and it was purple and it had Zildjian B8 cymbals. If you're a drummer, you know those are the trash can lids of cymbals. But the drum set was actually pretty nice once I got some new heads on it. And he was selling it for $200, which was a steal for all the hardware, the bass pedal, everything that was involved. And so I paid for that with my own money. It was pretty much all the money I had when I was 12 years old, just because I thought that would be so cool. And we take it home. We set it up in my bedroom. And let me think. This was probably gosh, 2008 maybe 2009. So all I'm trying to think, maybe 2010, a little, yeah, probably around there. Sorry, I'm trying to think about because the way I learned how to play drums, I never took lessons. I never really studied it, other than Jared Falk, who's still a really, really active member of the music education community. He had a great website called Drumeo, which kind of taught me a lot of the fundamentals. But the way I learned how to play drums was I had that thing set up in my room, and I had a really old cassette player radio, and I would take headphones that looked just like this, but they were like the Walkman headphones. They weren't even nice like these, and these aren't even nice. And I would just listen to whatever songs came on the radio, and I would play along to those songs, and I would try and listen and hear what was going on, so I could hear where the bass pedal was, I could hear where the snare was hitting. I didn't really know how the cymbals worked, and so I just kind of listened, and I watched other drummers on YouTube and stuff, Casey Cooper and Copus and all those guys. And so within a couple years of doing that, I got really, really good at kind of listening to the music and hearing my part. And it got to the point within a couple years I could hear a song and immediately play along with it. And this was probably when I was in like seventh and eighth grade. And so I mean, it is so funny. I would literally play for like 2 or 3 hours a day. I would play drums so much that the books would be falling off the shelves. So this was the first experience in my life where I really took ownership of my musicianship, and it wasn't something that my parents wanted to do because they never had anything to do with drums. And it was just something that I did and I wanted to do and I actually had fun doing. And yeah, like I said, I did it so much that the books would vibrate and fall off the shelves. And the songs that were coming out back then was like Gives You Hell by All American Rejects and Dirty Little Secret. Thanks for the Memories by Fall Out Boy was out at that time. You Belong With Me by Taylor Swift. E.T. by Katy Perry. And so I would just put on B93.7 on the radio, put my headphones in, and whatever songs are coming on, I would do my best to play along with them. And that's how I learned drums. But at this point in my life, I knew nothing about music theory. I didn't, because the way I learned violin, I was young. Sally taught me the music theory, but it was mostly by my ear. I would listen to the track and then I would replicate it. So I wasn't necessarily thinking about the notes or the key that I was playing in, the time signature, or much less the rhythms that I was using. It was just listening to the rhythms and replicating them, which I'm sure a lot of students do. Actually, in fact, I know a lot of students do that because I'll ask them to read their music and they won't know how to do it until I play it for them, and then they can all of a sudden read the music when they've heard it. So I know what y'all are doing because I did it. And that's one thing with violin. If nothing else, I learned a lot about teaching because I remember how I was at that age. So now when I'm teaching students who are that age, I can relate to them really well and I can motivate them and give them tasks that I know that I would have been good at doing or that I know that I would have enjoyed. All right, so now at this point in my life, I've been playing drums for a couple years, getting really good at it, and I start playing in my church. And I don't know what it was about drums, but I really did pick it up really quickly where I was good enough to be playing with bands and stuff within about 18 months. I was really good. I think I just have a really natural, I was just really naturally gifted with rhythms and stuff. I'm not like that with melodies where I could hear it and replicate it. So I started playing at my church, and at that time I thought I was a big deal. I was like, man, I'm better than all these other kids that are playing drums that are my age, and I felt really boastful in that, which I realized later in life once I actually started hanging around with adults and I went off to college and met other musicians how amateur I was at the drum set. And I've gotten better since then, but it's just funny how your mindset changes when you get into new environments. I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced that in your life. And so at this point in my life, I've been playing drums for about 5 years, and there was this really cool art program. I was homeschooled all through high school too, by the way. There was this really cool program where I lived in Greenville, South Carolina, for art students who were homeschooled, and it was mostly for musical theater and drama and singing and stuff like that. But they just had this new teacher who was teaching drum set, and they were actually doing a percussion ensemble. And there was me, Josiah, Garrison, and a couple other kids who were all drummers who were homeschooled. And so we all got together, and this was an awesome opportunity. And so I auditioned for the school, got in. In the first year I was there was my junior year of high school. So I was a composition major and a percussion major. So I was studying music theory And this was my first time really ever in my life studying music theory. And I was doing music composition, which was really, really cool. And I took music history, and then I did the percussion stuff. And I also did choir. This was my first time ever trying to sing in my life. Never had done it before. And I was not great at it at first, really bad. And so this year was a really big growth year for me. I was afraid to do things that made me uncomfortable, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate with. I was afraid to do things that made me look silly or what I perceived to be silly. I was afraid to do things that put me outside of my comfort zone. And I was just so worried about what people thought about me, unfortunately, because I missed out on a lot of cool things. One of which being was musical theater opportunities. So when I say I wasn't a good singer, I wasn't a good singer, but I was able to match pitches, which is like level one of singing. You just match the pitches. So if someone else was singing in choir, I could sing along with everybody else. But I wasn't necessarily a solo singer, and I just had no confidence, so I wasn't interested in trying either. And here was another thing: at the school, everyone was like the greatest singers in the world, so I was also afraid to. And I'm talking like actually, there was girls at our school that had won state competitions, and the guys at our school were just fantastic. Everyone was just gifted vocally. So I was afraid to even try, really. And I hate to say that because I think it held me back a lot and just kind of mentally held me back as well, where I wasn't willing to try or put myself in uncomfortable situations. So that first year, I was presented with an opportunity to audition for the play, which every year they do this one big production. And that year it was Oliver Twist. And I was like, oh, no, that's lame. I don't want to do that. So I didn't. And long story short, there was a lot of things that I missed out on because of that. All my friends were doing it. And at the end of the year, I went and saw that performance and how much fun everyone was having. And yeah, they're wearing costumes, they're singing, they're dancing. It's kind of silly in a little bit. But I was like, man, I really missed out on that. And there was a couple other performances they did, and I felt the same way. I felt really bad about myself, and I was like, why didn't you try and do that? But that year, I did get real. I improved a lot with my music theory, and my drumming got much better. That was when I actually started reading music, and I started understanding like triplets and diddles and rudiments, and so that and like accents and non-accents dynamics, and that really took my percussion playing to another level. Because before I would do those things, not rudiments, but it kind of took my understanding of what was possible musically to another level, and I started kind of studying music and writing music, which was awesome. So the next year, my senior year, I decided, and I had made friends, like some of the best friends that I'm still friends with to this day. I made a lot of really good friends through that. And so then I went on and I did everything. I did choreography club. I did the choir. I did all the choirs, and I auditioned for the show. And I did, yeah, I was in drama club. I did a lot of things that made me uncomfortable. And I also started taking piano lessons. This is important because up till this point, never played piano. I couldn't even tell you where middle C was, and I was like 17 years old. So I just started taking piano lessons because I realized if I wanted to write music before, I was just kind of fooling around on the staff. I didn't really know how to do it. And then I had gotten a piano, but if I wanted to play the stuff, I had no idea how to play it. So I was just getting frustrated. So I actually stopped taking drum lessons, switched to piano lessons because I realized that that would benefit me more in the long run. And so I condensed it down. I auditioned for the show, and I could sing and dance, which if you're a guy and can sing and dance, you're gonna get a lead. So I got a lead, and I actually had a vocal solo in this production. And I'm this was a pretty prestigious school at the time. It still might be, but I haven't kept it up with it that much. And so the shows that we did were probably in front of 300-ish people, and we did shows for an entire week. So I think there was maybe 5 or 6 shows, and I sang a whole solo in front of these people, and actually went really well. I was fairly impressed with myself because I didn't think I could sing, and I was harmonizing, and I was singing, and it was just so much fun and dancing. There was scenes. It was Seven Brides or Seven Brothers, if anyone's familiar with that, and I was the role of Frank, which is the kind of irate brother. He's tender on the inside, but he has a short temper, and that was so much fun. Really, really one of my like core memories of my lifetime. Just really good experiences. And if anyone's listening to this into my story, just take this from this. Put yourself in positions that might make you uncomfortable because it's gonna create the biggest growth in yourself and also give you the best memories and friendships and really develop who you are. And so I'm really, really thankful that I did that. And I also was still doing the drum line at this time too. I was playing snare drum, which was awesome. Really, really good for my musicianship. And I was taking music composition. So that year I actually wrote a number of compositions. And at the end of the year for my senior project, Me and my best friend at the time, Ben Toledo, we actually did a big production together at the end of the year where we had a 40-piece orchestra perform and we played with them some of the pieces that we wrote. And that was awesome. Really, really special night. And so moving on from there, I enjoyed music and I was good at it. I had a lot of natural ability. And there was also things that I wasn't good at, so I had doubts. And I went to school for kinesiology, which is because I was really into sports too at the time. I was really athletic. I liked exercising. I would always play sports and stuff. And I loved the idea of spending a career doing that kinesthetic motion stuff, sports training and whatnot. And so I went to school for kinesiology, and I was like, yeah, this will be fun. I really am interested in this stuff. Music's not real. I'm not going to be able to do anything from music, so I'll just keep music as a hobby. I'll play drums at church. I'll serve. Maybe I'll play with bands sometime. That's it. And that year was miserable for me. Not only, I mean, looking back, I really didn't even like college that much. I'm someone who likes to be in control of my environment, and at college, there was 10 or 12 of us in our hall. We had one bathroom. It's never quiet. The lights are always on, and the food really wasn't that great. Gosh, I don't mean to be slamming school like this, but it just wasn't a year of growth for me. So for that year when I was living on campus, I didn't play music at all. And I studied, but it was subjects like chemistry and biology that were interesting, but at the collegiate level, they became very challenging, and I did not do well. So I actually failed a couple classes at school, which is very humbling and put me in a really tough position for a couple years. I mean, really tough, where I lost scholarships. Even I lost friends just because you fall out of touch with people. I was stressed, and I didn't know what to do next. And I'm telling you, this whole year I didn't do music at all. I didn't even hardly touch the piano. I didn't. Okay, I did play drums actually at school a little bit if they needed drummers for various things. And I didn't know what to do with my life next. And at that time, I was actually working as a lifeguard and a pool technician, so I did that year round. And that was nice. That grounded me and gave me something productive to be a part of. But I'm trying to think. I don't remember what was it that brought me back into music, but I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. I thought about it a lot, and it was the things that I found myself doing always revolved around music and my interests and whatnot. And even the friends that I had at school, the ones who I was most attracted towards being friends with, were musicians. So I realized that that's the kind of community I wanted to be in. And so, but because I'd put myself in kind of a compromised position, I had to go off campus and I had to do school a little bit differently. So at this point in my life, I was actually working as a pool technician, and I got a job at Starbucks around this time. So I'm working two jobs and I'm going to school just part time. So I was only taking like three classes this semester, and I started doing them in music. And at this point in my life, I started practicing piano like crazy again. I started not like I do now, but I would practice for about an hour or two a day. And I was taking classes that were really interesting to me. They were awesome, except for the general ed courses. And honestly, through going to college, I learned so much about hacking college and how to get good grades, and even ways to take classes for free, how to do them with minimal cost, minimal effort, and but still getting the most out of it. And so I honestly need to make a video about that at some point because it was things that I never knew going into it that if someone would have told me would have really changed my life and made it a lot easier. But that adversity really shaped who I am. So I'm glad that I went through those things. If I could go back in time, would I go to college? I don't know. But you can't change the past. You can just reflect on it and grow from your experiences. And I think everyone should consider that. And so through all that, long story short, it took me like 6 years to graduate college. So I just graduated, or I just finished college last May, and I got a commercial music degree with a focus in piano performance. Oh my gosh, this is so funny too. Whenever I went to college, I had the hubris to become a piano major. Oh my gosh. So after taking piano lessons for a year in college, I was good at piano in the sense that I could play triad chords. I knew some scales. I could read music a little bit, but gosh, I did not know what I was in store for. When I went to college, there was people my age who were playing like out of this world advanced pieces, like the Moonlight Sonata Third Movement. And then we would have master classes we all had to play together, and I would play the stupidest stuff. I'm talking like really basic beginner pieces, and they would be playing this. I'm not kidding you when I say I'm the only one who was not at that advanced level, and that was so embarrassing. And I hate to say this too, but I skipped so many of those master classes. I went to almost none of them because I was so embarrassed, and I would sweat the whole time I was there, and I would think about, gosh, I have to go play piano in front of these people, and I'm gonna look like an idiot. And I was so afraid. And I wish I had taken more advantages of those situations too. Because now that I am better at piano, I realize no one cares. If someone was my age and not as good at piano as me, I would feel more inclined to support them and help them. I wouldn't be thinking of them badly. So that's another moral of the story. People are not thinking about you. And I'll be honest, they're thinking about themselves. And if they are thinking about you, it's probably how they can help. For the most part, people are nice, I believe. And so that was really embarrassing. But at college, I really did make some great relationships. My professor, Dr. Kim, was my theory professor, and I got really good at singing in regards to like sight singing and my ear being able to hear stuff because we have to take oral skills. And not only do we take oral skills, but we have to take exams. Oh my gosh, so we have the juries. If anyone ever went to music university, you know all about juries. You have to play in front of a panel of musicians, you have to sight read, you have to do various techniques, whatever they want you to see, and then you have to perform a certain number of pieces, and you have to pass 8 of those. Somehow I did. I don't know. And so, yeah, that's just kind of my college experience. So now I've been playing piano for about 8 years, and I still play drums. I don't have a drum set right now. In the future, whenever we move into a bigger space, I'd love to have a drum set again, and maybe even start teaching drum lessons. I did teach drum lessons for a while, and so yeah, and then also in college, going along, I worked at Starbucks the whole rest of the time I was in college, which was a great job for me. And towards the last few years, I actually was stepping up into a shift position. I was actually a shift at Starbucks for like 4 of the 5 years I worked there, and I worked at several different stores, made some great relationships. And the main reason I worked there was for the health insurance. I got health insurance through Starbucks because I've really been on my own since I moved out after high school, so I needed my own health insurance, and it was a good time, and I learned a lot from Starbucks. And I just left there back in January. I just realized it wasn't for me. And for anyone who's working a job and feels like it's not for them, you'll probably be able to relate to this. The whole time I was at work, I was just thinking about how could I be spending my time right now? What else could I be doing? If I wasn't here, oh man, I would just be daydreaming the whole time I was there. And I found myself starting to see the time go by. And I was like, wow, I'm 25. I remember being 22 and 21 like it was yesterday. And I've just been at Starbucks this whole time. And I really felt like that was propelling my life because 8 hours of my day was just gone. And I wasn't getting anything out of that really productively. I was at a point in the job where I wasn't learning anything, I wasn't being challenged. So I decided like a year ago that I was going to be leaving. And so at this point, I was teaching piano lessons too. I've been teaching piano lessons almost 2 years now, but I didn't have enough students where that would be viable. And I also had no health insurance option. So those were the two dilemmas. Thankfully, my wife has a great job, and I have health insurance with her now, which solved that. And I was able to build up my studio enough where I make enough money where I could leave Starbucks as well. I'll make videos and podcasts about that in the future too, because teaching is awesome. And so, yeah, leaving Starbucks has been great for me. The time has slowed down. I've been able to practice piano more than I ever have in my life. And I feel so much more energy and I feel happy and fulfilled with how I'm spending my time. So, yeah, that was a great and much needed change for me. And then going forward, the things that I want as a musician, I would love to compose music professionally. I love composing music, and there is really nothing more gratifying than writing this piece and crafting it and then being done and putting it away and listening to it. And sometimes I feel doubt about that or it's not good enough. But then if you really just kind of put that aside and listen to it, it's awesome what you can do. And it feels really good. I would love to be a piano player who performs. And also, I would love to be like, so I've been working on my sight reading a lot because that was one of my weaknesses. I want to be someone who can accompany other musicians. I think that's a great career. So, yeah, I would love to compose. I'd love to be a piano performer. And then just teaching to continuing to build my studio and crafting it. And in the future, I have different ideas of how that's going to go. I would love to move a lot of my education stuff onto online content, whereas that's selling and creating packages. And yeah, I'll just share it. A couple of the ideas I have would maybe be like the church pianist, where I compile like 8 episodes of everything you need, starting from nothing to wanting to play at your church. Or maybe a series called The Everyday, and I'm just literally thinking of this, The Everyday Pianist, where I'm just taking an adult who wants to play piano but doesn't have a ton of time to commit to it, creating different programs specifically focused on various people. And right now I have about 30 piano students. I'd love to get, once I get to 40, that's about where I'll stop, but 30 is great right now. So that takes up about 20 hours of my week. And I really have learned a lot. I teach a lot of ages. My youngest student's 5 or 6, and my oldest student's actually 75. He's great, Jim. And I have a lot of diverse age. I teach several adult students actually. And so and I have some high school students, I have some college students, and this has been awesome because I get to learn about all these different demographics and different personalities, how I can be the best teacher. And that's something and yeah, this is great advice that I've been told and that I've been applying. Whatever you're doing, just be the best at it. And so through my teaching, my goal right now is to find ways to really connect to various students to get them to a better level. And that's challenging myself as a teacher. And so that's just the kind of skills I'm trying to learn right now so that I can apply those later on in my life and moving stuff online. I love making videos. This podcast is awesome because it gives me a chance to connect with other musicians and build community and relationships. And anytime, the 2 times I've made a podcast so far, I've learned a lot and gotten a lot out of them, both in having the conversation and then learning about like production and stuff. Because I'd love to be someone who could be like a liaison to other musicians, maybe like a media person. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. We'll see. I love the idea of writing books. Maybe I'll write books about music and I don't even know about educational, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. That's all to be determined. And then the other thing I really enjoy doing is performing. So I play in a couple bands right now, and that's fun. So maybe a little bit of that in the future as well. And then, yeah, where I want to go with teaching, I would love to get to the point, and this is in the future, decades from now, where I could be teaching very selectively, maybe doing like college prep or high level students. Hopefully at that point I'll be composing more, so I'm not teaching as much, and I could just be having a select number of students who are really looking at pursuing a professional career, and I could be someone who helps them. And yeah, that's another thing I'm starting to learn too. As I'm 25 now, which I know a lot of people, if you're listening, are older. You're gonna roll your eyes, but I feel older. And when I say I feel older, before this, I would always see life as, oh my gosh, I got to get everything figured out right now. But now it's very, oh, I could see in 10 years from now, what do I want to be? What steps do I need to be taking right now to get to there? So that's like everyday habits and interactions, how I spend my time is going to get me there, whether that's watching what I eat or my taking care of my body, the amount of time that I practice, the skills I learn, the relationships I build. What I'm doing right now will affect the future me. And so even 20 years from now, where do I want to be? Thinking about all that. As I've gotten older, I start to see that more clearly, that, oh, wow, I can be 45 years old and still be right in the middle of my career. My body can feel great, and I can still be getting a lot of this stuff done, but I'll be 20 years more advanced than I am right now. So that stuff's all really cool. And I love making YouTube videos. This has seriously been so fun for me, and I love building a community. I've gotten to meet some really awesome people through that. So yeah, that's just a lot about myself. Let me just, excuse me, Mr. Joey. It's my cat. If for anyone just listening on the podcast, he's on my lap. Yeah, that's about everything I wanted to cover today. So in the future, this podcast, I'm your host, Jordan Evans, and I just want to create a space where musicians and creators can come and share about themselves, kind of like I just have, to everybody, because I think that's really important. I think a lot of people have a lot of important things to say and things that we can learn from that. So if you've listened to this and watched this, it's nice to meet you. I just thought I would take this chance to introduce myself just so you know who I am, what kind of things I want to do, who I want to be, and just so you can kind of know me a little bit better. But thank you so much for watching this or listening. Hope you all have a blessed day, and we'll see you in the future.